I was born in Kenya on a farm, and that's basically where I was raised. So the first 15 years of my life, I spent growing up in a magical place. Kenya was just a garden, and with animals and flora and fauna and all around. And I guess one of my regrets is that maybe I didn't appreciate it enough when I was there. And then after that, I went to Australia and I finished my schooling and education. And then I went to sea. I always had a great love of the sea. And in 1984, after a number of different sort of careers and things like that, I was inspired, or we were inspired, to start a project to build a commercial sailing cargo vessel, which we built and was launched in 1984.
Yeah, that was a major environmental project, really ahead of its time, because shipping does take a lot of fossil fuels to keep it all going, and the idea of using wind power has been around, obviously, for millennia, but this was a big idea, and we were totally passionate about it. We'd actually lived on a boat when we first met and sailed across the Atlantic a couple of times, which was my first real introduction to nature and being without, taxis and newspapers and city life, which I'd always grown up with. So, but we had come to really appreciate and want to do something, want to be involved in helping the planet, really, in as big a way as we could.
So we sort of collected some money and we went and built this sailing vessel, which operated for a number of years and in fact was quite successful. But like many projects, it failed because of human relationships.
And actually, our relationship failed, not just because of that, but certainly the project did put a strain on our communication, which became practically non-existent, and we separated. And that was in the early 90s. So that introduced for us a strain of our other business, which is to do with life coaching, because we managed somehow to find a model that helped us understand what had happened, what had gone wrong for us, and brought us back together again. So that whole episode was an important part of our story.
Yeah. And essentially that was a model, learning about relationships, how people relate, how you work together, what are the blocks to that, in terms of, because, everything's a relationship problem, everything that goes wrong. So, healing relationships is an important thing. And so for 30 years, we've worked on that and continue to do so.
That business is what drew us to Microbz, because Jeff was working with a philanthropist, traveling the world looking for environmental solutions, and came across this particular one, which was microbial balancing technology. And when he came home and explained it, or talked about that particular aspect of what he'd seen, it felt like a really magical moment for us. I remember we were walking out in the countryside, and it just felt like a gut reaction, I guess, to go, hey, this is something that we can be involved in, small scale, really helpful, and an amazing solution in so many ways to so many of the problems that we face.
Over the last 12 years of doing it, we've kind of started off, when we first started, we had little small brews on the kitchen table. Yeah. We'd sit there and watch it bubble away and ferment.
Persuade all our friends to try it.
Yeah. And so that's how we started. And it just seemed like everywhere you looked, when you looked from a microbial level, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. So for me, the passion really grew on microbes. And the main thing that got me is the more I studied them, the more I realized all life came from microbes. 5 billion years ago, this world was, the only life form here was microbes. And from that soup, all life, everything, every living thing you see on the planet then came from that soup. We evolved in different ways and, and did different things, but that was the original mix. And so now recognizing that life came from there, and also now that life is still sustained by those same microbes. Yeah. If you think about it for a second, when you get up in the morning, you have your breakfast, right? You eat a banana and you have a Weetabix or whatever. By the middle part of the day or the afternoon, that banana and that Weetabix has now become us, you. Think of the intelligence that it takes to take a banana and some Weetabix and turn it into you, flesh and blood and all these things we can do. That's incredible intelligence, and most of us don't give much thought to that. You just go, oh, well, you just eat a banana and that's it. But no, and much of all that process is conducted through your microbiome, through our microbes, or the microbes that are around us.
And of course, we're totally unconscious of that. It's happening in our system automatically. And it is a very new science that we're just beginning to understand. In fact, one of the things that I remember thinking when we started was, how are we going to explain this to people? I mean, it's incredibly complicated. It's a whole new way of thinking that instead of killing 99% of all germs and, using these chemicals in our houses and in our cells and on our soils, we switch it. Could we switch it? That we actually work with nature instead of trying to control it.
You can't kill the microbial world. Each time you use a bleach, each time you use a disinfectant or something like that, some chemical, all the microbes are just getting together, the ones that survive, and some do survive. They will then evolve until they don't get killed. And then you start creating the pathogens. You start creating
the superbugs.
The superbugs. Yeah. And it's like, if we lived in harmony with them, they wouldn't need to do that. They wouldn't become a threat to us.
And how are we going to explain that to people when there's all this advertising out there that's so contrary? But over the last 12 years, it's just been everywhere. There's lots of studies done now that really prove the link between this microbiome and our health, not only our physical health, but our mental health. And the more that comes out, the more it kind of supports us, but also just reinforces what we kind of have been learning about as well, so that it's not just us that's educating people. It seems to be everywhere. And I just feel really privileged that we're in this field too, that we're part of it.
One of the lessons we've learned is you don't have to suffer. I mean, almost to the point of saying, if you're suffering, something's wrong and it can be corrected. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, as bad as it is, in our experience, there's always a way out. There are answers, there's solutions. These microbes are incredible. We have so many people who've just, been suffering for years and years, intestinal issues or depression or unhappiness in the many forms that we've been able to create unhappiness in. Mm-hmm. And to reverse that, using some, nature. Just realigning ourselves to nature, realigning our bodies, realigning our thoughts.
We're not just saying that because we know from our own experience, our emotional pain in our relationship, issues that we've had, physical issues that we've had, which have been quite varied as well. So we speak from experience. It's not, we don't have to live with pain and suffering.
We love it, and we get to work with people we like, and we get to work with the material we like.
We get to love what we do.
Absolutely. And so it is a labour of love with the microbes. I mean, certainly we get tested and we need to learn and continue. But if I learn about microbes from today to the end of my life, I'd still die knowing far less about microbes than there is you could possibly learn. We all came, and life all comes from the soil. Without soil, you have nothing really. Like they say, we're all came from it, and we're going to go back to it. So that the soil is like the home of the microbes. It's so important for us. It's where the microbes kind of, are most at home. Anywhere in the world, if you find a really virgin piece of soil, of forest, of savanna, whatever, that has not been farmed or anything mechanical or been sprayed on or anything like that, that if you learn then how to collect the microbes from there, in any place in the world, you will land up with the same microbial combination of families, of species, and in the same proportion. So recognizing from that we can then replicate that, and then to put it back in the soil, or put it back into nature, or put it back into the world is, our contribution. Because I think what it does is starts to reverse so many of the other processes that have been going on. All the exhaust and pollution and oxidation that's gone on in our society, in our environment, to the point now of where kids growing up in cities are just, it's a toxic environment. We've created a whole toxic world in many ways. And now, we feel the answer to reversing that toxicity, whether it be in your body, within your children's bodies, whether it be in your garden, whether it be in your household, in the cleaners that you use, in any chemical that you use, that you can reverse that toxicity and start having genuine and sustainable health. We need to get back to living in harmony with nature. Yeah. And we've gone so far from being in harmony with nature. And for us, that way back, that yellow brick road for us are microbes. So one of the many lessons that we've learned from microbes is about cooperation. The microbes really work together. One of the things we've learned is that, having a wide spectrum of microbes just gives you so many possibilities because they're so cooperative. They work together. They're not competitive. And so that's also the situation we're in a little bit. I mean, we've got to a certain point, we have a certain knowledge, and we also have a real desire to share it. So if anyone out there feels called to, cooperate with us, to work with us in any way, in terms of research, looking for different methods, helping in any way about getting the information out there, we're willing to share what we know and what we've done.
For us all to become more conscious of where we are in the planet and with our businesses and surviving well and so on, thriving, we need to cooperate the way the microbes do. And we really invite anyone who wants to work, with us, help us, we'll help them. Let's collaborate as best we can in this microbial world.
There are just limitless possibilities out there for the use, for the distribution, for microbes and this microbe technology and understanding.